Hello to you. It's me, Spear. Welcome to my very first FPL video for the new 2024-2025 Premier League season. And I have something special for you. It's a full, comprehensive guide to all the goalkeeper choices in Fantasy Premier League this season. I've sorted these by price points, rotation pairs, and solo picks. You're going to see all the stats that matter and a full fixture breakdown before the first wildcard deadline. An introduction to my rank history is on the screen for you. I finished 23k last season, 10k the season before, 8k the season before that, and my best was 16th. I watch most of the Premier League games and I've been playing the game for almost 15 years now, but you don't care about any of that. What you care about is the guide. And without further ado, let's get into it. First of all, for the goalies, there has been some slight rule changes. On the screen, I've shown you a full list of all the point scoring potential routes for the goalkeepers. In terms of rule changes, goalkeepers actually now get less BPS. That is the point system that denotes whether or not they are in the highest scoring bonus points production area in order to get 1 to 3 bonus points each game. They now get less BPS for penalty saves. They get 9 instead of 15 versus they used to. And they also lose 4 BPS per goal conceded as well. That further dents the appeal of putting more funds into goalkeepers. As usual, it's minus 1 point for conceding 2 goals, 1 point every 3 saves, 2 points for playing 60 plus minutes, 3 points for an assist, 4 points for a clean sheet, 5 points for a penalty save, and 10 points now for a goal. Remember, the BPS is just an accruement of points within each individual game that denotes whether or not they're in the top point scorers for that match and thereby whether they get bonus points for that match. So not too many changes, though the changes have dented goalkeepers' appeal a little bit. Onto this section here, and this is an important slide for anyone looking to have keepers from the same team or a 4 million perma bench keeper, which is most people are going to be in one of those two categories. It's the 4 million options. There are no playing 4 million goalkeepers at the point of this recording, unless we have a lot of injuries to certain teams. The ones on screen are the only 4 million keepers that are first choice reserves for their respective teams. If you have the lead keeper in these pairings, I have listed them on the left-hand side there for you. If you have the lead keeper in these pairings on the left, then it's not a bad idea at all. In fact, it's probably very smart to double up with their bench counterpart you are seeing here. The only issue with this at all is taking up 2 slots for that particular team. What it does allow you, though, is to have a guaranteed playing goalkeeper every week because you have the first and second choice keeper, and your second choice keeper is taking up the least amount of funds possible for that position, thereby giving you more freedom everywhere else in your team. So it's very, very viable, and I would recommend picking the reserve keeper if you do have the lead keeper here and don't want to rotate. If you're looking for the most likely to get minutes, then it is Valdemarson for Brentford. It's still very unlikely he's going to get minutes. He's the most likely of the lot if there is at all. Flekken is easily first choice, but it could happen later in the season. So if you're looking for a 4 million bench option and you have Flekken, or you have an expensive keeper or a keeper with no 4 million reserve guaranteed, then just go with Valdemarson. The worst picks on here are Ward and Lumley, as they're the only second choices in their respective teams due to injuries to Stolazic for Leicester, and who's out till late January, and Bazunu for Southampton, who's out till 2025 likely. These two teams, or these two 4 million playing keepers, play for newly promoted sides. So those stats you're seeing on screen up here for Leicester and Southampton are massively inflated because they're from the Championship. So you could argue that they could be the lowest in terms of expected goals prevented for the season, especially Southampton, who came in through the playoffs. So I really wouldn't recommend them, but they are the second choice keeper to their 4.5 million starting keeper. I would say that Southampton are the most likely to invest in a keeper, so Lumley's even less likely to play if that happens, and I do see that happening as well. Two options we haven't mentioned here are Bender and Virginia. They're really, really nice picks if you're picking Leno for Fulham or Pickford for Everton. It effectively guarantees you a playing keeper for a pretty strong defensive side in each of Fulham and Everton. Lastly, we have Bentley, who has no chance of ousting Jose Sa unless there's an injury. But if you own the Portuguese shot stopper and don't want to rotate, then obviously Bentley is a good pick. I do think Valdemarson by far is more likely to get more minutes than Bentley or any of the rest on here, barring injury. So that's why I would go with Valdemarson if you just want a 4 million bench fodder option. Or potentially go for Bentley if you're worried about that taking up an extra Brentford slot. And that is the only downside to having one of these 4 million keepers on your bench, really, is the fact that they are going to take up a team slot. So it might be that you go for one of the promoted keepers just because you probably won't want to triple up on Leicester or Southampton. And the other downside, of course, is that you're not going to be rotating keepers if you have a 4 million keeper, because these guys aren't going to play. Okay. On to 4.5 million keepers. And this is probably the slide you'll maybe spend the most time on reviewing yourself and pausing, which I would recommend for this video. I'll also timestamp everything to make it easier for you. In my opinion, looking over the stats, watching these teams play in the Premier League for years now, these are the best 4.5 million keepers. As you can see, there's no promoted goalkeepers in my recommended 4.5 million list. Some have been mentioned previously, and one may be mentioned in the rotating pairs. I do think the newly promoted sides are due some pummelings by the more experienced Premier League sides, and also no one really knows how they're going to get on, whilst those on screen here are known entities for us in the Premier League, and we have stats to back it up. Explaining some of the stats on here that you're going to see throughout the video. All of them are calculated per 90 minutes or per game. Doesn't really matter for keepers. Per 90 minutes based upon last season's data. XGA is the expected goals against per match for each team or keeper. Again, it doesn't matter. You're not really looking at individual keeper, more so at the team as a whole and their defensive astuity. GA is the actual goals against per 90. So that's what they actually conceded per 90 versus what they're expected to concede. Difference is the difference between those, right? So it's the difference in real terms of real outcome. For example, if it is plus something, so if you're seeing a plus number there, which you are on the 4.5 keepers, then the team has performed worse in terms of goals conceded versus how they were expected to. And if it is minus something, which you'll see on the next slide for 5 million keepers, then the team performed better than their underlies were expected, okay? So it might show you more the quality of the defense and the goalkeepers in particular on that diff stat. So if the diff stat's particularly high and the positives, probably not the best keeping roster on the team. The one exception for that is Miguel of Notts Forest, because he didn't play last season at all for Notts Forest, so you can't really judge him on that 0.24. The rest of the keepers dominated their minutes for their side. You know, there was Petrovic for Sanchez, but he still had, I think, more minutes, and there was Johnston for Henderson, but again, he had a lot of minutes. And, you know, those keepers are a similar level, really. So yeah, the last stat in diff is showing, generally speaking, the quality of the keeping rosters for those teams. Finally is saves, and saves is the average number of saves per game for the keepers in that team. That includes all keepers for that team last season. And then finally, after that, the fixtures are color-coded by my own difficulty criteria. See, it's fairly similar to other folks' difficulty criteria, but I just did this manually. Okay, so discussing through these then, from bottom to top, we have Areola. Areola has the worst expected goals against by far, and that's more so due to West Ham and West Ham's defence rather than him individually as a keeper. As you can see, actually, as a keeper, he performed pretty well versus the other 4.5 options there at a +1 diff. What he does allow is a lot of shots, which is good for saves and good for bonus, but not the best for clean sheets, of course. Sarr is a nice option up next, especially with Bentley alongside him at 4.0, but has horrible fixtures. Gary O'Neill really does have him playing well. Flekken follows a similar suit as Sarr and Bentley, with Flekken and Valdemarson, again also being 4.5 and 4 million. But Flekken has much better fixtures, quite polarising fixtures, in fact, for Flekken. As you can see, we have Palace at home, then Liverpool away, Southampton at home, the easiest fixture of the season, then Man City away, the hardest fixture of the season, Tottenham away, they're very difficult, West Ham at home, very easy. So yeah, there's very polarising fixtures for Flekken there. Neto has middling fixtures up next, the Brazilian for Bournemouth, but plays for a decent side and plays for a decent manager in Areola. Miguel really does look like a standout pick, with the only real issue being that there is potential for any of the free keepers starting, but they have signed him specifically to shore up that leaky backline, especially from set pieces. And both keepers last season, in Matt Turner and Sace, really performed horribly. And I expect him to start. He has really nice fixtures for Forest and good underliers for Forest, generally speaking. And Nuno Espirito Santo, not exactly the most adventurous manager, so you do expect them to rely on clean sheets. Sanchez is quite similar to Miguel, i.e. he has very good fixtures for Chelsea, but again has the threat of other keepers within that goalkeeping roster. They've just signed Jorgensen, the Danish fellow from Villarreal. And Maresca has come out and said, the Chelsea manager, that Sanchez is favoured, or at least has heavily implied it recently in the past few weeks. And the issue with Sanchez is not only just rotation, but also the dreaded first Man City fixture to open, which no one is gambling on a clean sheet for. Finally, at the top of the list there, we have Dean Henderson for Palace. There is slight threat from the returning Johnston, who is a good keeper, but I expect Henderson to start. Great stats and decent fixtures for the former United shotstopper. And I do really think that this 4.5 million bracket as a whole is the best bracket to choose from in terms of value, saves, and bonus. Okay. On to 5 million keepers now. And for me, these are the only 5 million keepers that are viable somewhat. Vicario isn't on this list, the Spurs and Italy goalkeeper. He's too expensive at 5 million. You can get Van de Ven for 4.5, who's a guaranteed starter, or Porro for 5.5, who'll easily get more points than Vicario this season. On to the ones that are in the list. Emiliano Martinez plays for a strong team in Unai Emery's Aston Villa, but is pricey considering you can get Ezri Konsa for 4.5 million, who's guaranteed to start, and you can also get Maatsen, who has a lot of threat, at 5 million. And I also don't like his opening 2 fixtures. So for me, Martinez is a no-go because there's better options in the backline, but he's viable at least. Pickford is arguably the prime pick in this particular table, in this particular 5 million bracket, due to Sean Dyche's defensive focus and strength. Plus, Everton don't score many goals, so he's more. It's more likely he'll get bonus as a result of that. The fixtures are really decent. Good data last season, and he has a 4 million backing him up in Virginia as well, and it's unlikely you'll want 3 or more Everton players anyway. The same can be said for Leno with regards to having a 4 million backup, but he plays for a more attacking side in Marco Silva, former Hull City manager Marco Silva, who I know from watching him in seasons gone by. He's a more attacking manager. Dyche is much more defensive. And Marco Silva's side have lost João Palhinha, who is Mr. Defence himself, and that'll be a big loss for Fulham. So I do think there'll be a big fall off for him. I do actually think they should have priced Leno at 4.5 million, and I do think it's a slight pricing error for them. And he was overpriced due to the overperformance of Leno and Fulham last season. And Paulinho's departure should really have been taken into account. The other fact of the matter with Leno as well is that you can get Robinson, who's a really attacking fullback, or even Castagna, who again, another really attacking fullback, for 500,000 less. So it's really not viable there. So I would say that Leno and Martinez, you can get better options from the defence. So just stick with them if you need to. Nick Pope and Andre Onana are the weakest options here for me. They're still viable, and you can see they have a higher save rate there, plus a decent opening fixture, but for me, too pricey. You can have Martinez for United, and you can have Dan Burn for Newcastle, or even Livramento if he starts. I just don't think they're viable at all because of the starting players in the backline that are cheaper. Okay? 5.5 million keepers. So these are your premium keepers, okay? These are your premium keepers. So we've got David Raya, Alisson Becker, and Edison Moraes. To be blunt, I don't like any of these picks. They're too pricey. There's no bonus potential. There's no saves potential, as you can see on screen. And they take up a slot, a very valuable slot from these three teams. You're going to want free Man City at some point in the season. You're going to want free Liverpool. You're going to want free Arsenal, again, at some point in the season. If you really want to spend money here, I think it's better spent elsewhere. But if you really do want to spend money here, David Raya is my pick because of just how strong they are defensively. And there's a small advantage that these goalkeepers are slightly cheaper than any of their team's nailed defenders, and much more nailed than them too. One small consideration here is if you're considering an early wildcard, then Alisson has really strong starting fixtures. If you're looking at fixtures and an early wildcard, if you're looking at longevity, it's Raya. Again, I'd avoid all this bracket at all costs personally. Your money goes further elsewhere, and you're purely relying on clean sheets alone. Okay, now to a special section for you here, and this took even longer than the other sections, which took a long while. This is my 9 million duo section. This particular section shows you all the favoured fixtures before being forced to use your first wildcard after game week 19, after game week 18, before game week 19 starts. If there is a bad fixture, I've included both options to show you those and favoured the home fixtures when calculating things. You can also see how many fixtures they play at home, how many are poor, how many they play against newly promoted sides, and how many are against low XG sides. Low XG sides I've classified as any team with an XG per game last season of lower than 1.5, i.e. bottom half of the table teams in terms of XG, or just purely newly promoted teams as well. First up on the list are on screen already for you, and that is Flekken and McCarthy. An incredible run of 17 of the first 18 fixtures of the season before that forced wildcard are at home. And that is impressive. Though the XGA stat that you're seeing there of 1.15 per game expected goals against, you can see that on the far left there, from the Saints stopper is massively inflated due to Southampton's promotion last season. You could probably put that more in an area of Areola's 1.8, 1.9 this season. So don't let that skew your view of this. That's more of a 1.8, 1.9. I've just put it there because that's the only data we have from last season for Southampton. McCarthy is their number one, whilst Bazunu is injured and they haven't signed a new keeper at the time of this recording. Bazunu is out injured for a long while. He looks to be out until 2025, and I do think that Southampton will sign a new keeper, and they've already said, I think they've implied this. So if they sign a new number one, just watch out for that. I have no doubt they'll also be priced at 4.5, and you just switch out McCarthy for that new keeper before the start of the season. It's a very easy switch, but we need to know who that is. If they don't get anyone, then McCarthy will be the starter. Okay, but Southampton really need a Premier League level goalkeeper if they have any chance of staying up. So for this particular rotation, I think it's one you maybe more focus on if they do sign a new keeper before the start of the season. If not, it's worrying to start the season with Alex McCarthy between the sticks for Saints. The nice part of this pairing is 3 of the 4 bad fixtures as well come after game week 13. That's December, by the way. Just in summary, a strong fixture lineup with the main issue being the involvement of a newly promoted side. That is an issue straight off the bat, even if they do get a new keeper, and the quality of the current keeper if no goalkeeper is signed. This is one to watch really as the transfer window continues for the Saints, but a very promising one if they do sign someone. Also, just to give you a look at the fixtures, you can't see that. I actually will make myself smaller so you can see them all. There you go. Just for those of you who want to pause it and have a look, I'll make myself smaller for this one on screen. There we go. I've minimized myself. So Flekken and Henderson is next. This is a very strong partnership of Brentford and Palace. You can see their underlying numbers are great. Again, only one bad fixture until mid-December and game week 15. And that bad fixture is Man United at home for Palace, which isn't a bad fixture considering the injury news that has just come out for United. 15 of the first 18 come against low XG sides. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, 13 of the first 14 are against low XG sides as well. So it's a pretty crazy combination. The first 7 fixtures are at home for this duo. It looks really strong. Also, one small thing to watch out for this season is Henderson's minutes versus Sam Johnstone's in pre-season for Crystal Palace. But I think this is a really strong combo. Up next, we have Flekken again. It's the last one involving Flekken. And Areola, Alfonso Areola. This option here is maybe one more so for saves potential, and maybe West Ham Areola or Areola fans. Only one bad fixture in the entire first wildcard window, and that's against Chelsea at home, which isn't so bad. And 15 of the first 18 come against low XG sides. Not bad at all, and 2 largely nailed keepers, or very nailed pretty much for 4.5 keepers at least. This next one again retains Alfonso Areola, but adds the new Nottingham Forest signing Miguel of, and again this one takes advantage of Forest's early run, and has decent long haul fixtures too, as you see towards the end of the run if you really do want to hold off on that wild card. My issue with this duo though is the bad fixtures in 5 combined with 2 away games in the first 4, so you might not get off to the best start with this one. And obviously, since we're starting the game now and we can have unlimited transfers, that's not what you want to hear. So this isn't my favorite duo, but it is an option if you like this duo. Also keep your eye out on preseason minutes for the Nottingham Forest stopper Miguel. This one here is one of my favorites. A much better combo, in my opinion, than Miguel and Areola is this one for me. Miguel and Verbruggen. The issue here is Verbruggen's minutes. He really should be number 1. Looking at the stats with the eye test 2 versus Steele. But with a new manager and uncertainty over this, keep your eyes on Brighton's preseason minutes for their goalies. I'd really be surprised if he wasn't Fabian Hertzilla's first choice. The fixtures are quality, the underliers are very impressive here. The first 11 games involve 10 being at home, and then it finishes off with a sea of green after game week 11 as well. One of my favourites if we get more information from Hertzler. And the last combo here is another strong one, but last but not least is the Forest and Chelsea combo of Miguel and Sanchez. both keepers here, one of the big issues here is that both keepers may lose minutes if they don't perform. And that's the biggest downside here. If any of us had to put money on who's the starter for each club here, these would be them, I'm sure. But that's the downside, is there is always the risk of someone taking their spot there if they don't perform. The fixtures aren't the greatest versus the other sides, but what this one does involve is Chelsea, who should really perform better this season. And Sanchez is cheaper than any of the defenders. We'll do watch out for Sanchez losing minutes, but he really should be first choice, at least for now, and Maresca has said so. This is a really nice one if you want to go with a Sanchez plus someone else. This slide here, let me change my camera there. This slide here, this is a really nice summary for you of my favored 9 million combos. I've ordered it in XGA against, but that does involve Southampton at the top, who should really be at the bottom, just a note of that. I do think that this is an even more viable combo this year of doing a 9 million duo. And this is due to the additional transfers saved during wildcard rule change, and also us being able to save more transfers as well. Previously, when we had to use transfers more frivolously because they would expire, you could play a bit more around with your goalkeeper and just have one starting goalkeeper. I think now that it really is more viable to have a 9 million duo. My favourites are the Brentford Palace duo of Flekken and Henderson, due to the underliers, due to the nailedness, and due to 15 of the first 18 being low XG sides. The Brentford and Brighton duo are also great due to the stats. That's if we get more information on Verbruggen being nailed. The Saints-Brentford pairing is really appealing only if Saints buy a new 4.5 lead keeper, so look out for that. Again, it's a newly promoted side though, so there is a little bit of worry there, but 17 fixtures being at home in the first 18 is crazy, with 13 of those being low XG. I don't particularly like the West Ham defense, so I'm not favouring the West Ham duos you're seeing at the bottom there. I would say that the Chelsea-Nottingham Forest duo is very interesting if Chelsea finally shore up at the back and we get a bit more information about the security of starts. That probably holds the most potential in this, but again lacks security, much like the Verbruggen Miguel combo. So lots to choose from there. This next slide here is showing you my favorite solo individual goalies to pair with a 4 million keeper. So you can go and look at the 4 millions, and if one of them matches up with this, then that's great. If not, you can just go with, I'll show you it right now, but you can go back to this slide here and just pick Valdemarson, or pick the keeper that corresponds with your playing keeper. So Flekken and Pickford are the ones who can be paired with their 4 million counterpart to guarantee a playing goalkeeper every week. So if you do pick one of those, just pick the reserve and you're good to go. Pickford is really nice due to the fixtures, due to Dyche's management style, and their lack of ability to score. The only downside to him is the price of 5 million. And personally, I'd rather have two playing goalkeeping investments at 9 million rather than just one player. That's the downside to Pickford. As you can see, no 5.5s, they're a waste of money in my opinion. And the other 5 millions usually have someone better in their backline as well. There is Mikolenko, I suppose, for Everton, but because of just how strong defensively Everton are and the potential of picking a bonus for Pickford, that's why he's there versus some of the others. Flekken is really the entry-level version of Pickford, and Henderson is a nice safety pick if you're going for pure clean sheet likelihood and some security of starts. Sanchez, I would say personally, has the highest upside and the highest potential. But then you have to consider that there is that Man City first game to deal with and the threat of other keepers taking his place at Stamford Bridge. Miguel is again similar to Sanchez and a similar potential, but with maybe better fixtures, but a generally weaker side, I would say, with Miguel. Overall, in my opinion, if you're going for a solo goalkeeper, I would say that Dean Henderson and Mark Flekken are the best solo picks. Miguel and Sanchez are nice if we see them get their spots or are more confident in minutes. Pickford would be the best if money was no object, but we do have the 9 million pairs, which I personally prefer. This solo goalkeeper strategy usually is the most viable, but picking wrong this year could be disastrous for this. That's the other plus side of the 9 million duo pairing, is that if one side starts to perform horrendously, then you can just switch to the other keeper without having to burn a transfer as well. So these are the best solo picks in my opinion. This slide here is just me really showing you my final thoughts on what you need to consider when thinking about your goalkeeper picks this season, to start the season. I've seen a lot of content creators focus on individual goalkeepers and their quality. It doesn't really matter that much, to be honest with you, when it comes to the Premier League. What you're really looking at now is the strength of the team defensively last year and their prospects going forward, okay? Certainly, if certain teams don't sign players like McCarthy starts for Southampton, or if for some reason Notts Forest don't start Miguel and start Turner, or start Sace, considering how poor they were last year, then yes, individual prowess comes into it. But generally speaking, most teams will be either have a new starting keeper or a very solid keeper. So you're really looking at the defensive team stats from the players you're picking for goalkeepers. It's one of those rare situations in FPL. Fixtures really matter for goalkeepers, okay? They really matter. If you're going for a solo pick, you shouldn't be too worried on the red fixtures because generally speaking, they'll get a lot of save points at least, but are very unlikely to get a clean sheet. But generally speaking, obviously you want to play teams at home and you want to play teams who are poor offensively. Pay little attention to the individual stats for goalkeepers. I can't highlight this enough. I've seen content creators talk about keepers occasionally getting assists or goals, or what they think of the quality of that keeper. Really doesn't matter any of that. What matters is the defensive team stats, and that's what I'm trying to highlight here. Pay close attention to expected starters. There are some goalkeeping spots up in the air, or at least there's some slight doubts of uncertainty there. So do keep up with preseason minutes. As I said, there could be goalkeepers taking minutes off others or changing of first choice keepers. Even if there is, though, generally speaking, they'll be at the same price. You just switch the keeper out before the start of the season. Do match up your 4 million keeper if possible. So if you're going with one keeper only and you do have the 4 million reserve, great. That's actually really good for you. Rotation pairs at 4.5 each look really good this season because of the new transfer rules. So personally, I'm swaying towards that as of the time of recording of this video. I think the extra 0.5 personally is worth it, and you also get that nice option of each week getting to pick your goalkeeper. The only downside of it is the extra 0.5 can't be used elsewhere, and you'll bench points some weeks, almost guaranteed. Also to look out for your goalkeepers is if you think, oh, Spee, you've said to not go for Vicario, but I want him. There's a reason for that, right? And the reason for that is comparing the prices versus the defenders. Vicario is 5 million. Pedro Porro, one of the best attacking defensive assets last season and will be this season, is only $500,000 more. So pointless going for Vicario. And Van de Ven is $500,000 cheaper, for example. So do check out the team's defenses, because maybe your team structure benefits more so from one of the defenders, and maybe in terms of price too. It's also completely okay to double up defensively with a defender and a goalkeeper, like a Mikolenko and a Pickford, or a Flekken and a Rico Henry, something like that. It's a fallacy to think that doubling up is poor for your team. Especially with rotating goalkeepers and rotating defenders as well. So don't worry about that too much. Ultimately, and in conclusion, pick a keeper from the team or teams you think will perform the best at the start of the season and in terms of their defensive strength. Me personally, I don't want to plan an early wildcard. I think that's silly. I know a lot of people like to do that. A lot of high-ranking players like to do that too. but I'm looking long term and looking to plan out long term so that I can save my wildcard and save up a lot of transfers and spend those transfers on my outfield players, having 2 rotating keepers and 2 keepers to choose from. If fixtures turn, if you get an injury to one of them, if one of the teams starts to do very poorly, you're good to go. I don't want to be wasting transfers on a goalkeeper, and I don't want to be wasting too much money on goalkeepers either. Okay, so my recommendation to you is to pick a 4.5 million starter with a 4 million bench, someone like a Flekken or a Henderson or a Sanchez or a Miguel, something like that. Or pick 2 4.5 million rotation pairs from the ones I've recommended, which I'm swaying towards at the minute. And again, just pick your favorite, okay? I really hope you've enjoyed this video. It was a long time in the making, and I've been suffering from COVID, so if my voice sounds differently or you're wondering why I haven't posted any content for a while, that is why. I also traveled a very long distance to see family recently, so things have been difficult for me, but I really enjoy making FPL content. Please press subscribe, because you'll then be able to see my upcoming Defenders video, which I'm going to start making as soon as I upload this. It's going to take me a while. It's again going to be a full comprehensive guide. If you like my content, like it, comment on it, share it with people. It really helps me out. Turn your notifications on. I love chatting to people in the comments too, so if you've got any questions for me, if you're noticing anything in the video that you enjoy or that you disagree with, please comment about it. And we do have fun in the comments here, so yeah. I do wish you luck. I'm really looking forward to the new season. Again, I might not seem as bubbly as usual, but that's purely due to COVID really hitting me hard these past couple of weeks. But I'm really looking forward to it. It should be great. There's lots of options. Pricing seems a lot better than normal, and I'm looking forward to creating more content for you. So I will see you in the Defenders guide, which, if you're watching this later, may already be ready, and you can click on that for the next video. But without further ado, make sure you subscribe, notifications on for more FPL and football videos. I do live streams on Twitch, twitch.tv/speardrops. I'm also on Twitter/X @speardrops. And if you want to buy me a little gift, you can find me at throne.com/speardrops. Goodbye, good luck. I will see you on the next video.